Okay. Awesome. All right, we seem to be live. Hello, hello, hello. How are we today? So, we have a couple of things that we're doing today. First being, we just got a new piece of kit, which I am super psyched on. We picked it up for an upcoming project, but I also believe it'd be great for PTS. So, we picked up the Insta360 X6. See it here. Catches the light a little bit better. Now, I think this is the Solo Filmmakers Ultimate BTS camera. The reason being, you can basically set it up and you have a multitude of angles to choose from, not only in vertical aspect ratio, but horizontal aspect ratio. And you can basically pick and choose the angles you want after the fact. So you just set it and forget it in a sense. I'll show you kind of my my setup for it as of right now. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get my stills camera. So, let me pull out the Insta360. So this guy, brand new. Look how cool that is. Awesome. All right. The Insta360 X6, what it differentiates this from the X5 is not only the form factor, being a lot shorter and stubbier and a little bit wider, but also the internal mechanisms and specs that go on the inside. Now, the big factor for me picking the X6 up over the X5 is the iLog. With the 10-bit color science and iLog, you have so much versatility in post, especially when you're shooting 8K, to reframe and to color grade to match everything else that I have going on a little bit better. The thing with 360 cameras, in my opinion, is they have a very distinct look and they have a very video quality. Now, the hope is with the 10-bit color science and the iLog, we are able to achieve something that is a little bit more versatile, especially in post-production, right? Now, power this guy on. It's a fun little sound. There are a couple of use cases for me that I think this would be great in. Like I said, the main one being the kind of setting it up and kind of forgetting it. Not necessarily on a tripod, but what I do is, let's say I am shooting stills. Have my stills camera with me, 1DX Mark II. I'll set this up with a magic arm. Something like this. And bear with me, I'll screw this on. So I'll screw it onto like where the base plate goes. And then I can position it off frame right by the lens. Kind of something like this, right? And then I can put the Insta360 on. Riveting content as I'm screwing on a quarter. Okay. So then now you have this kind of ridiculous looking thing. Bam. So I'll be able to basically catch my angle, which would be like widescreen. And then I will also be able to catch my talent and kind of a more traditional BTS kind of sense. So I'll be able to essentially, let's say I turn this guy on, hit record. Here you can catch my angle of directing talent and what kind of goes on in my head, as well as when I fire stills. Let's get on. When I fire stills, so you'll be able to see what I'm shooting simultaneously. Now, I think this would be great not only for when I'm shooting stills, but also when I am using my cinema camera, because I can rig it off to the side of like my Komodo, and it will be the same thing essentially, where I can either have my Komodo set up on my gimbal or have my Komodo in a handheld setup and be able to both capture BTS content while still focusing on what I'm doing. And this is especially useful for me when I'm out on the field alone, because I don't always have the luxury of bringing a production assistant with me to some of my gigs, right? Now, for somebody like myself who owns a creative agency, who creates content for other people consistently, I often find myself in a situation where I can't create content of me creating content all of the time. This is a failsafe for me now. I'll be able to just mount this on and have an array of angles, opposed to like me setting up another camera on a tripod, worrying about it in the background as I'm focusing on creating, what I'm creating. And then I'm like, oh no, I have my black magic back there. What's happening with that, right? So it's just peace of mind mostly, but also the versatility of it, I think, is going to be game changing. And I look forward to field testing this a little bit more and then bringing you guys along with me while I do so. So I think that's kind of like the biggest use case that I'm kind of looking forward to, is having that extra fail safe for content, right? It's really funny being a commercial media creator and feeling like you never have the time or the content or resources to make content for yourself, because you're always making it for other people. And I hope this changes that for me, because once again, you don't always have the luxury of bringing on a production assistant for every shoot, right? Other kind of keynotes that are cool about this camera in specific, they have a couple of different features that are making it a little bit more user-friendly to manage the 360 content. Because the biggest pain point for most people is, the constant reframing, the keyframing, kind of getting used to working with 360 footage. And, they have a lot of smart features now with like the AI director that will kind of cut together your clips for you, and then also prioritize, faces and subject tracking to kind of get rid of some of the difficulty that will come with producing, shooting and navigating these 360 files. In my case, I don't always love the direct pans that these AI directors use, like the kind of like turn around. What I would most likely use this for is like I'll have an angle that is kind of me directing my talent, and then I'll cut back to the front camera angle of like my talent modeling, doing whatever it may be, because I think that is a little bit more akin to like what you would typically do and gets rid of that like 360 feel a little bit better. But yeah, super excited for the iLog and for the 10-bit color science. I'm curious to see how it will hold up in like my typical kind of like vlog settings. But yeah, what else? The other factor that I guess like I was more kind of concerned about, but I think with this camera solves a lot of it, is the lens scratches, because you can see it is quite obtuse the lenses do come out a bit, and you can't just put this down without like having it lay on the lenses. So being able to change a crackle lens is very much a game changer in that sense. I can't speak much to the jitter or blur reduction or like the stabilization, because I haven't used it in like action case scenarios yet too much. But I am looking forward to kind of field testing it more. Yeah, let's see. What else do we got? Another feature is you can kind of like use it as a single lens camera. I know there's been a pain point discussed about like the iLog not being a profile for that. But what you can do is if you hold down the video and then you go into flat mode, there is a Instaframe 2.0 that does have iLog. And then what it does is essentially you can just like tap on your subject and it will follow said subject and kind of act like a gimbal tracking. And this does support the iLog with the 10-bit. So super cool, super cool feature. That would be great for when I do set this up on a tripod and just kind of let it sit while I'm working around a room, kind of like in a studio. I see that being a better use case for that. Another thing that I was genuinely surprised by was the audio quality, like the mic quality straight out of camera. So there's mics here, here, and here, and genuinely it picked up very well. I was worried about having to use external microphones on this camera, which you still probably can, but the built-in microphones do hold up pretty well. Cool. All right, moving on from this, I wanted to start looking at some of the content that we shot for Montemare and start processing some of those stills. All right. So, bring this guy up a bit. Let's open up Lightroom. I already culled these images, so we should be able to see everything straight off the bat. Really, my first pass of this footage is to try to get everything to a nice kind of like linear spot, and then from there we'll go in with some of our 5-star edits and then bring them into Photoshop to do some more detailed retouching. Really what I'm trying to replicate is kind of like a more film-esque look, a warmer kind of look, something that matches the profile of the bags a little bit better. Some context into this shoot, we were trying to mimic a more lifestyle content shoot instead of like a more product focused shoot. So really we were trying to nail the story of 3 friends visiting the city for the first time. So we're in a couple of different environments and landscapes. And really we're kind of focusing on the moments and memories where this bag would be kind of like joining you through versus just like selling the bag, right? Okay, so here's a couple of the images. I shot this on 1DX Mark II with a 24-72-8, and really I want to, let's start with this still. Okay, so first things first, I kind of like the Dutch here. I'm not too perturbed by it. Let's see, maybe we bring in a little bit more warmth. And then, oh, you can't, let me move my, this seems like it's a better spot for me. Great. Okay. Introduce a little bit more warmth. And then in terms of saturation, I feel like maybe just like a dot. Ah. Does this not work? That's 10. Okay. Can I do this? Interesting. It only works by 10 intervals now. Okay. So I think just a hint of saturation here. And then maybe a little bit of vibrance. And then let's see. Okay. And then what I always try to do here is crush the blacks a little bit. So I pull up the bottom curve a bit to give it a little bit more of a faded look. I just personally like that kind of touch, and I want to desaturate some of these greens a bit. So what I'll do is I'll go into the color mixer, and then I'll take the saturation down on some of the greens and maybe some of the luminance, just to make it a little bit less kind of jarring and all up in your face. Just kind of my personal preference when it comes to greens. I would love to bring out some of the color here a little bit more. So maybe when we bring this into the retouch, or I'll try to do a little bit of this now. Maybe with a mask. Let's go with brush. The new Lightroom features take forever to load, man. So this is why I prefer Photoshop. And then let's bring down the whites just a tad. Okay. Bring just a tad, because the thing is, it was just way too poppy for me. Off, on, and then I want to bring a little bit of that brown back in to get a little bit more of that color back. So then we'll go back to our color mixer and then bring some saturation. We're gonna have to key this as well. I might do this in Photoshop because it's just a little bit easier. Okay, and then let's see. Focus is pretty good here. I'm not too worried about the noise. And then just to see what this would look like, let's add a little bit of filmic grain. Great. Okay. So then before, after. Now let's see, I'm curious if we fix the Dutch, what does this look like? Fix the horizon line a bit. There you go. What do I like better? I kind of like having more of the environment in the shot. Let's keep it here. Okay, and then I don't think I need to do any of the optics stuff. There's not too much chromatic aberration or anything in this still, so that's great. When we get into Photoshop, we'll take care of some of these flyaways. And then let's rate this for a Photoshop retouch. And then I still just feel like too much of my eye is like in this area. So I might try to bring that down still even further. And then let's see, can we pull in some saturation for that? Okay. Awesome. All right. Next still. Okay. I shot this a little under, so let's level it out first. And then bring a little bit of that contrast back. Do I want the detail in the back? Okay, here we have a choice. We can either favor a blown out window or kind of restore some of that dynamic range. Let's try to favor in restoring some of that dynamic range first. Bring the shadows up. Let's see how our focus is. This is going to need some noise reduction posted over the top. So let's introduce a little bit more contrast. Let's add not an S curve per se. Can we crush the whites as well? Just a tad. And then introduce. We need to go in and correct some of the skin tones. Okay. And then let's add some of that green. And then some dehaze. There we go. And then let's see, what else? Where else can we bring this? Point color. I would like to add some saturation, some separation into those blues. And I feel like oh, interesting. So point color works almost like selective color does in Photoshop. Okay, so let's use the AID noise. And then so if we cycle, I'm not sure how this is processing in YouTube, but you can see the difference between the digital noise with the denoiser, and then we added some grain over top of this, which we can take away so you can kind of see what it looks like. Okay. Okay. Let's round trip this into Photoshop so we can take care of some of the the items that we'd like to kind of touch on here. So let's right click, edit in Photoshop, open as a smart object in Photoshop. And that's going to pop open Photoshop for us. It'll take a second to load. Cool. Now we're going to take out our trusty Wacom. Move my color panel over. Severely limit my... Interesting. I think I opened this in a older version of Photoshop. Okay. Cool. All right. So now that we're in Photoshop, we have our Wacom. What we're going to do is we're going to tackle this area of the frame. I'm going to make my notes here of what I kind of want to do. So brush tool, bam. And then I want to take all of this down a stop because I just think it's like really distracting. And then I want to adjust their skin tones because their skin, I feel like, is not where I want it to sit in terms of the gradients and colors. So that's what we're going to handle here in Photoshop. So first thing we're going to do is take care of this area. So let's do a levels, and then let's kind of bring this down to where we want it. And then we're going to use a layer mask to brush. Okay. This way we're brushing in that mask using a soft round brush to make it a gradual transition in terms of our color. Okay, so if we come out, we can cycle this on and off. I see there's some spots that are still too loud. On, off. Yeah, that's better. So now my eye, instead of being drawn into kind of this area, is now brought back up here. Now that I'm in Photoshop as well, I'm going to take care of some of kind of the distracting things in the frame itself, like flyaways and, like, for example, this patch that's here. So I'll use the spot healing tool and see what this does. Kind of bring in some more grass back in here, so that way it doesn't look as gross. Cool. Here you'll see some of the Polaroids that we had. I think I'm also going to take these away simply because they just, If they were closer in frame, that would make more sense, but right now they're just kind of like awkwardly at the edge of frame, so we're going to remove this bit. Okay. Coffee break. All right. Next, let's handle some of the flyaways. Before we do that, let's start our retouch. So group this. And then I will edit here, frequency separation, bam. Okay, cool, continue. Okay, great. So now that we've done our frequency separation with the action, we can go into the frequency separation layers and start playing with our skin. So for the high frequency, there's not much that we need to like go in. It's more so like for some textures that we, let's say, want to remove. So when you're doing this, you can use the healing brush tool, but make sure you remove the sampling all layers. You want to be on a small size brush. Bring the hardness down as well, and then you can kind of get in real close and start to sample like areas of texture that you might want to remove from the frame. So like in this case, just like this little dot of texture, you can start to sample out. Now, I never try to overwork this. I just simply want to smooth out just like little pieces. Nothing too crazy. We want to keep the natural feeling, especially for this. Okay, I think we have some good separation here. Once again, I would love to introduce some more saturation into this blanket to kind of create a little bit more color separation. So what I'll do is underneath the levels adjustment, I'll do a selective color, and then or maybe it might be more effective to do hue and sat, and then take the area, right now I am just looking at the blanket. And then what I'll do is I'll copy over the layer mask, so that way it only selects layer. Okay, great. And then let's say I made this adjustment and I don't really want it to be as intense when I'm looking at the image. I just take my opacity and bring that down. I can adjust how strong I want each node to essentially be. I want it to be almost like a darker brown. So I'm trying to find where that sits. I think closer to here. There we go. That feels a little bit better to me. Okay, awesome. Now, let's talk a little bit about skin tone. I'll just go into selective color here and then so basically if we group all this together, here's where we started. Here's just the adjustments we made in Photoshop to kind of bring those levels down. If we save and round trip back into Lightroom, our adjustments should be brought over. So then what we'll do to keep this as kind of like a backup, we will then drag our PSD into the selects folder. So file, save as. We'll bring this into where we saved our selects. Such a large file structure. Save. Okay. All right, great. So then now our PSD is here. There we go. And now we have our PSD in Lightroom. Great. Cool. So that is our first trip from Lightroom to Photoshop and back. Now let's pick a different image. Let's say this image. Let's open this up in Photoshop. So left click, then open in Photoshop. Keep Lightroom open. Lightroom needs to remain open while you make edits in Photoshop to allow your edits to transfer back to Lightroom. Close photo in Photoshop. You must close the photo in Photoshop to export your work back to Lightroom. Your file layers will be preserved as long as no edits are made in Lightroom. Okay, let's open up in Photoshop and see where we are at. Cool. We have our second image to work with in Photoshop. Okay. First thing we are probably going to do here is take a look at the background to see what we would like to clean up. The first thing that comes to mind is this piece on the window. And then everything else seems more or less alright to me. So let's do that first with our composition. Oh, sample all layers. There we go. That's magically gone. Okay. Now, I think what I would like to start with is I don't need to tackle any real flyaways. I think actually I'm curious. I'm just going to cycle my light off. Okay. Locked in. Okay. Let's see. Now let's see if we can create a little bit more separation between the subjects in the background. Great. Awesome. Let's see if we can add just like the smallest amount of separation. So we'll do that by adding a little bit of exposure. And then maybe just the smallest amount of sharpening. Like a super tiny amount of sharpening. Cool. Awesome. And then maybe we invert the mask and then do, or if, can we duplicate, can we like create an outside node? I wonder if outside nodes exist in Lightroom. It's been a while since I played around in Lightroom. Cool. I kind of want to send this to my phone to see what it'll look like on that display. So file, export. Okay, new folder, stills, exports. Now I'm going to send this over to my Google Drive, and from my Google Drive to my phone. What a lovely process. Sometimes I wish I fell into the Apple ecosystem so I can have AirDrop, but unfortunately, I don't. I don't love that ecosystem, at least for desktops. Stills export. And at last, we have our file. First file, yes. Okay. I'll create a folder. It's funny because it's like this is goes against everything you should do when it comes to like color grading and whatnot. Having a giant blinding light glaring in my eyes as I'm editing. these stills, but my lighting is not great in here, so you do what you gotta do. Okay, let's open this on my phone. This is great. I'm going to go into a darker room. Okay, great. I do like how this looks when it's compressed down on the iPhone. Now, the only thing that I do want to take care of is, I don't know why I'm pointing, but I took care of this in Photoshop. I want to heal it as well in Lightroom. So I guess I can use the remove tool, similar to the spot healing tool. There. Cool. I also don't like how distracting this is over her head. Okay, great. Now, I think this is a finished image. If my computer doesn't take 3 years to... Cool. So this is our first finished still. So I'll label that red. That's good to go. Okay. Let's see. Let's take a look at this guy. Can we copy some of our edits over to here? And I want to see how much of it lines up. Okay, that's pretty good. I do want to kind of fix the perspective a little bit and keep the focus on bam. Go back to the development. Zoom out. Crop. The composition is just a little unflattering. So maybe it's just here. And then let's straighten it a tad. I like the headroom, but I just don't like how far left it's leaning. That fixes it a little bit more. There we go. Cool. Awesome. All right. And we're just going to repeat this process for various stills, just until we finish with the lookbook. Okay, let's see. Their skin tones are slightly different, so I'm curious to see what the selective color does here. Working with two people with different skin tones can always be difficult, but we're going to try to get this to a tidier spot. Okay, I think for her, I would need to bring her up a little bit just in terms of exposure. Okay, let's first fix the composition. Once again, kind of left leaning, which I don't per se love. Whoa, computer. It's acting all crazy. I'm gonna give it a second. There we go. Okay, are you responsive again? You are. Perfect. Okay, let's go into our masking. Detecting people. The AI tools have made life so much easier. Significantly easier. Okay, let's say person 2. Okay, let's say entire person. Okay, let's bring up her exposure just a tad. Just so that way she matches a little bit better. She was like falling out in the background there. And that's just a matter of distance because the model in the front was like closer to the light. And then let's see if we can remove a little bit of the highlight glare. Bam. Okay, now let's go back into our development and see if we can play with the saturation just a tad, because I feel like the saturation for this image is a little bit less, it's like a little bit more fallen out than the other images, especially kind of like in this brown area. I think for her skin tone, I'll bring saturation down just a tad. Yeah, just a tad, just that way we kind of balance out skin tones a little bit more. I would say even a little bit less. Okay. And then maybe I would like to add a little bit more grain to this image. Cool. All right. I'm going to export these two images. Actually, let's finish the set or here. Oh. It's still loading. Impressive. Jamming. Okay, this image has a little bit more visible banding and chromatic aberration. So if I remove the chromatic aberration, you can see it look right here by her arm, off, on, great, kind of like used to kind of checkpoint that. Now, fixing the composition, I have a tendency to just kind of like put my eye through the viewfinder, and I need to check more often when I'm level. This one isn't that resounding to me, so I'm going to label this as blue in the sense of like, I don't know how I feel about it yet. So okay, similar thing here that we want to do. What is this in the background here? That's just the metal fringing. Okay, let's fix the crop. Let's bring her up from the background here, so that way we're sitting at a more or less similar level. Oh, let's first straighten this out a bit. I don't mind losing the dynamic range for this picture. This was shot at 4.5. I should have shot this a little bit slower. Instead of like 2.8 or 4.5, I probably should have gone to 6. She's not as tack sharp as I would like her to be. But, you know, nothing is always ever fully sharp. I think this is the scam, the digital era, and all these camera companies want you to feel that it needs to be sharper always. And that's not always the case. But I constantly feel this too. So, who am I to judge? Let's bring her at about the same spot. Computer AI is freaking the hell out. Okay. And then let's see what this kind of spread looks like. So we're taking this image, we're taking this image, we're taking this image, and we're taking this image. Let's export this file. Export. If my computer decides to respond at some point, that would be great. What is happening here? There we go. Okay. My computer is like dying. Okay, we're exporting this spread and we're going to open it up on our phone to see what this looks like, and then we are going to also potentially open it in Adobe Firefly or something of the sort to kind of get a sense of you know what, it could either be Firefly or 7.3. Which one's 7.3? Okay. So that way we get a sense of what this looks like as a spread. And then, all goes well, we can greenlight it for a post. Okay, first things first, I'm going to open it on the destination, which is a digital release. So I want to see what it looks like on the phone, first and foremost, with the conversions that happens. Okay, awesome. These look good to me. Let me open them in Firefly and just drag them in there. Okay, this is Firefly. You can drag your images in just to kind of keep track of like things and like create little boards. So let me show you guys what I'm looking at. So basically here I can bring in like all of my images to see them as a spread. Oh, I dragged it into that window. Needs to be its own thing. Down. This is the one that we push saturation for. So I think, cool. Okay, out of these two images, I feel like I want to keep maybe this one. I am a little bit torn because I think the sharper handbags are this image. So we'll see. I'll probably keep this one just because of the needs. So we can say this is scene 1. Train station. I'm going to fix the colors here because they don't line up as well before I send this off. That is our first set of images. We're going to take a quick break and move on to our next set of images. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back in a little bit.